So there is this really incredibly specific, almost universal threshold you cross, right? Usually somewhere in your 40s or 50s.
Oh, yeah. The wake-up moment.
Exactly. You wake up, you swing your legs out of bed, you stand up, and just unprovoked things hurt.
Right.
And you didn't do a heavy workout the day before. You didn't tweak anything. You literally just slept. But your knees click, your lower back feels super rigid, and you have this sudden realization that, the underlying architecture of your body is fundamentally changing.
Yeah, you're really feeling the physical onset of biological aging there.
Right. And I think the default assumption for most of us when that happens is that this trajectory is entirely linear.
Mhm.
It's just this irreversible, guaranteed, steady decline of muscle power and bone density.
Which, that's a remarkably fatalistic way to view human physiology.
Is it? Because it feels pretty inevitable.
Well, sure, it feels that way.
Yeah.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture of cellular biology, that decline isn't just some abstract function of time passing.
Okay, what is it then?
It's actually a highly specific deterioration of your metabolic energy systems. And, what we are looking at in our deep dive today is a whole stack of clinical findings from a leading kinesiology researcher.
Right, and he's basically spent his entire career proving we can actually alter that trajectory, right?
Exactly. He's published over 120 papers mapping out exactly how aging cells lose their ability to generate energy, and more importantly, how we can intervene.
And the intervention is the massive surprise here, honestly, because, if we are talking about halting the degradation of human tissue, you would naturally assume the solution is, I don't know, a novel, super expensive pharmaceutical intervention.
Oh, totally. A prescription drug.
Right. But instead, we are looking at a basic, naturally occurring compound that was first identified way back in 1832, which is creatine.
Yeah, creatine.
And I know for anyone listening who has spent any time in a gym over the last 3 decades, that word comes with a ton of baggage.
Some of this baggage.
It immediately conjures up these images of 22-year-old gym bros shaking neon liquids in plastic jugs just to add an inch to their biceps.
Right. The classic bodybuilding stereotype.
Exactly. But looking at this clinical data, we really need to completely rip up that stereotype today. Because this researcher's findings on older adults, it reframes this compound entirely. It's not just some cosmetic bodybuilding powder.
No, not at all.
It is a fundamental longevity tool designed to preserve your functional independence.
And the clinical data completely justifies that reframing, But to understand why it's so crucial for an aging population, we first really have to look at the baseline biology.
Okay, let's get into it.
So our bodies do naturally synthesize creatine, usually about 1 to 3 grams a day, primarily in the liver, and it's also synthesized in the brain.
Okay, so we're making it ourselves.
We are.
Yeah.
But the biological stress placed on our systems as we age increases significantly. So the amount we synthesize internally simply cannot keep up with the metabolic demands of an aging body that's trying to repair itself.
Right, and I want to break down exactly what those metabolic demands are. Because reading the statistics on aging tissue in the sources, it's pretty stark.
It really is.
The clinical data notes that after age 40, just an average sedentary adult loses about 1% of their total muscle mass every single year.
Yeah, 1% a year.
But the actual strength, the force those muscles can actually generate, that deteriorates at a much steeper rate, right? Something closer to 1 to 3% annually.
Exactly. And when you map that trajectory over a few decades, you aren't just looking at, a softer physique.
Right, you're looking at a profound loss of functional independence, like the inability to get out of a deep chair unassisted.
Or the loss of that stabilizing power you need to just catch yourself if you trip on the stair.
Right, which is huge.
It's a devastating loss of functional capacity.
Yeah.
And it happens primarily because of what is failing at the cellular level.
Yeah.
Every single mechanical action your body performs, from a heavy deadlift to literally just keeping your posture upright while you're typing, relies on this energy currency called ATP.
Adenosine triphosphate.
Exactly, ATP.
Okay, I want to map out the mechanics of this ATP currency because in the sources, it seems to be the absolute linchpin of the whole process.
It definitely is.
So when a muscle cell needs to contract, it uses ATP, but it doesn't just consume it and make it disappear entirely.
No, it changes its structure.
Right, because the ATP molecule has 3 phosphate groups. And when the cell uses it for energy, it literally breaks off one of those phosphates. And the energy released from breaking that chemical bond is what powers the muscle contraction.
Just spot on.
But then you are left with a depleted molecule called ADP, adenosine diphosphate,
Right.
that only has 2 phosphates now. So it's essentially a dead battery, right? It cannot be used for energy until it gets recharged.
That is a perfect visualization of the biological mechanism.
Yeah.
Your cells have very limited stores of ready-to-use ATP.
Okay.
So if you were doing something physically demanding, those stores are jeopardized within seconds. The cell is suddenly just flooded with these dead ATP batteries.
And it needs to recharge them fast.
Desperately. It needs to reattach a phosphate molecule to them so you can keep moving. And this is the exact moment creatine enters the biochemical equation. Because in the body, it's stored as phosphocreatine.
Meaning it is physically carrying that missing phosphate.
Exactly.
So if ATP is the rechargeable battery that drains the moment you use it, the creatine is acting like a high-capacity power bank that stays permanently plugged into the cell.
That's a great way to put it.
As soon as the battery drops a phosphate and dies, the creatine just immediately donates its own phosphate to recharge it. It sacrifices itself to instantly regenerate the ATP so the cell never hits zero power.
Precisely. It is a rapid-fire energy regeneration system.
Wow.
By donating that phosphate group, it ensures the muscle cell has a continuous supply of energy currency to sustain the workload. For an aging adult, this means having the cellular endurance to push through physical barriers that would normally just exhaust their muscles prematurely.
Okay, so that addresses the energy side of the equation. But the sources also detail this profound structural change that happens to the muscle tissue itself.
Right, the hydration aspect.
Yeah, because creatine is highly osmotic, meaning wherever it goes, water naturally follows it. So when it enters the muscle cell, it pulls all this intracellular fluid along with it.
It does.
And the clinical data refers to this as creating a highly swollen, hydrated cell environment, like a tight water balloon. But my initial reaction reading that was definitely skepticism.
Oh, sure. A lot of people react that way.
Because if the compound is simply pulling water into the tissue, then aren't the reported gains in lean mass just, temporary water weight, not functional contractile tissue? It sounds like an artificial inflation rather than a biological improvement.
Yeah, that is the most common pushback from both patients and even clinicians. However, the cellular biology reveals a much more sophisticated process happening there.
Okay, how so?
That state of being swollen with intracellular fluid is not just passive storage of water. It is an active, highly anabolic trigger. The physical swelling literally stretches the cellular membrane.
And the cell reacts to that.
Yes, the cell perceives this mechanical stretching as an anabolic signal. It's a process known as mechanotransduction.
So the cell essentially feels the physical tension from the water pressure and interprets it as a command to reinforce its own walls.
Yes, exactly. That mechanical stress directly upregulates the signaling pathways that are responsible for muscle protein synthesis.
Oh, wow.
And simultaneously, that highly hydrated environment inhibits the pathways that cause protein breakdown. So it alters the fundamental environment of the cell to prioritize tissue growth over tissue degradation.
That's amazing.
And when you introduce weight training into that superhydrated, energy-rich cellular environment, the results are incredibly robust. Clinical trials consistently show that older adults who combine resistance training with this cellular hydration gain significantly more functional lean mass.
How much are we talking about?
Often an extra 1.2 to 2 kilograms of actual contractile tissue compared to those performing the exact same exercise routine without it.
I mean, adding 3 to 4 pounds of functional working muscle is a massive structural advantage for an aging body.
It's life-changing.
But, if we are talking about adding more force-generating tissue, those muscles obviously do not exist in a vacuum. They anchor directly to the skeletal system.
They do.
So if an older adult is suddenly generating more mechanical tension and force through their muscles, I have to assume that places a vastly different level of stress on the underlying bone architecture, right?
You're exactly right. And that underlying biological connection is exactly what prompted researchers to investigate beyond just the muscular system.
Because we've always just thought of this as a muscle thing.
Right. Historically, we viewed this strictly through the lens of muscle physiology. But one of the most significant paradigm shifts in the recent literature is the profound effect this metabolic fuel has on the skeleton itself.
Especially regarding bone density.
Yes, specifically in counteracting the loss of bone mineral density.
The data on postmenopausal women was particularly striking to me. The trials demonstrated a measurable reduction in the rate of bone mineral density loss, specifically isolated around the hip region.
And hip is so crucial.
Right. From a longevity standpoint, the hip is arguably the most critical structural junction to protect. A hip fracture in an aging adult is rarely just a simple orthopedic injury.
No, it's often a catastrophic event.
It usually mandates months of total immobility, which then drastically accelerates the atrophy of the rest of the body. So preventing the decay of that specific structural integrity is essentially preserving a person's physical autonomy.
It is a critical intervention.
Yeah.
But to understand the mechanism of how a compound stored primarily in muscle tissue actually rescues the skeletal system, we have to look at the cellular dynamics of bone.
Okay.
Bone is not just inert concrete. It is a highly active, living tissue undergoing constant daily remodeling. And this process relies on two competing types of cells. You have osteoblasts, which are responsible for secreting new bone matrix.
So they're the builders.
Yes, the builders.
Yeah.
And you have osteoclasts, which resorb or break down old bone tissue, the demolition crew.
Got it. And biological aging essentially skews that ratio, right? The demolition crew begins working faster and more aggressively than the builders can lay down new matrix, which results in a net loss of density.
Exactly what happens.
But here is where the mechanics kind of confuse me, because the literature explicitly states that 95% of the creatine in the human body is stored inside skeletal muscle.
That's right.
So if the vast majority of it is locked away in the muscle fibers, how is it exerting any direct influence over the osteoblast and osteoclast cells way inside the bone?
Well, it comes down to the circulatory availability of that remaining 5%.
Oh, okay.
The fraction of creatine that remains in systemic circulation is selectively taken up by tissues with extremely high energy turnover. And bone remodeling is an incredibly metabolically expensive process.
I can imagine.
The osteoblasts require massive amounts of ATP to synthesize and secrete those new structural proteins. So by increasing the systemic pool of phosphocreatine, you provide those bone-building cells with the same rapid-fire energy regeneration system that the muscle cells use.
Okay, so if I'm tracking the analogy from earlier, it's like walking onto a biological construction site.
Right.
You aren't just telling the builders to work faster. You are basically handing them an unlimited supply of high-voltage battery packs for their tools so they never have to stop and recharge.
That's a brilliant way to look at it. And that covers the anabolic side, right? The osteoblasts. But the clinical findings reveal a dual mechanism.
A dual mechanism.
Yes. The presence of this cellular energy simultaneously suppresses the differentiation and activity of the osteoclasts, the demolition crew.
Wait, really? It stops the demolition too?
Yes. It downregulates the specific chemical signals that tell the body to break down bone tissue. So by fueling the builders while simultaneously slowing down the demolition process, it actually mimics the cellular action of bisphosphonate medications.
Which are the primary pharmacological intervention for osteoporosis. That is fascinating.
It's huge.
But looking at the clinical protocols, there is a very strict caveat attached to these bone density results. The researchers emphasize that simply introducing the compound into the bloodstream does absolutely nothing for the skeleton if the subject remains completely sedentary.
Oh, that is a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
The presence of metabolic energy alone cannot force bone tissue to remodel. The osteoblasts require a directional signal.
Yeah.
They need to know where to lay down the new matrix.
Right, they need a mechanical stimulus. The physical compression and tension created by lifting weights is what creates the microfractures and stress signals in the bone architecture.
Exactly.
So if the weight training is the structural blueprint telling the builders where to lay the concrete, the creatine is simply the limitless supply of raw materials and energy required to actually execute that blueprint.
Yes.
Because without the weight-bearing exercise to provide the instruction, the cellular energy just has no target.
A perfect synthesis of the mechanism. It is a force multiplier. You must introduce the mechanical stress through resistance training. The compound simply ensures that your cellular machinery has the energetic capacity to rebuild that stressed tissue significantly denser and stronger than it was before.
Okay, so if the underlying biology points to such a comprehensive preservation of both muscle and bone, the immediate question for anyone listening is the practical application. Like, how do you take it?
Right, the dosing protocols?
Yeah, because the dosing parameters in the clinical literature actually present a bit of a mathematical dilemma. The metabolic threshold required to trigger these changes varies wildly depending on which tissue you are trying to target.
Right, the differing thresholds reflect the density of the cellular receptors in those tissues.
Okay.
So if your primary goal is simply preserving skeletal muscle mass and ensuring adequate ATP regeneration for daily movement, the clinical consensus requires a very low threshold.
Like how low?
Roughly 3 to 5 grams per day, which equates to just a standard teaspoon of the powder. that's sufficient to saturate the muscle tissue.
Okay, however, the data specifically isolates adults over the age of 50 for a modified protocol.
Yes, it does.
The researchers observed a highly localized depletion of natural energy stores in the lower extremities, specifically the calves and anterior tibialis muscles in the shins.
Right, those stabilizing muscles.
Yeah, the ones we use constantly for walking and balance. They seem to lose their energetic capacity much faster as we age. So to counteract that specific lower leg depletion, the researchers suggest the over 50 demographic needs to push that muscle dose slightly higher, closer to 5 to 7 grams, just to ensure those critical muscles remain saturated.
That covers the muscular requirement.
Right.
But the skeletal system is remarkably less sensitive to the compound.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, to achieve that dual action suppression of the osteoclasts and stimulation of the osteoblasts, the bone tissue requires a massive influx of circulating energy.
So how much are we talking for bone?
The clinical threshold for bone density preservation demands 8 to 12 grams daily.
Okay, so this is where the math gets murky for a consumer.
I know where you're going with this.
Right. If the lower leg muscles of an aging adult require 7 grams to stay saturated, and the skeletal system requires 10 grams to trigger bone remodeling, my immediate assumption is that the physiological systems are competing for the resource.
It seems like it, logically.
So does a person attempting to protect both systems need to ingest like 17 grams a day to ensure both the muscle and bone receive their required allocations?
Thankfully, no. The biological distribution is cumulative, not additive.
Oh, okay. How does that work?
The skeletal muscle acts as the primary reservoir. When you ingest the compound, the muscles draw what they need until their intracellular storage capacity is completely maximized.
They fill up first.
Exactly. Once the muscle tissue is fully saturated, the overflow remains in systemic circulation. And that's where it becomes highly available to the skeletal system and the brain.
Got it.
So taking a total of about 8 to 10 grams per day is sufficient to completely fill the muscular reservoir and guarantee enough surplus circulation to trigger the bone remodeling pathways.
Good to know. Because 17 grams sounded intense. And speaking of intense, the literature also aggressively advises against the traditional loading phase.
Oh, definitely.
For years, the standard advice in athletic circles was to take 20 to 30 grams a day for the first week to just force the muscles into saturation rapidly.
Right, the gym bro protocol.
Exactly. But for an older adult whose gastrointestinal tract might be more sensitive, dumping 30 grams of an osmotically active compound into the stomach is just a guaranteed recipe for severe cramping and digestive distress.
The loading phase is a purely impatience-driven protocol. It forces saturation in 7 days, sure, but it is biologically unnecessary.
Okay.
If an individual simply takes a steady microdose of 8 grams every single day, the cellular reservoirs will naturally reach maximum capacity within about 30, maybe 28 days, and with zero gastrointestinal side effects.
It's just slow and steady. There is also this really fascinating demographic anomaly in the absorption data. The researchers noted that individuals who follow a vegan or vegetarian diet demonstrate a radically magnified response to the supplementation.
That's entirely true.
Because the only natural dietary source of this compound is the skeletal muscle of other animals, right? Specifically red meat and seafood. So a strictly plant-based adult is operating with chronically depleted intracellular storage.
They're basically running on empty in terms of creatine.
Right, so introducing the supplement to a system that has been running on empty for decades yields a profound, immediate biological response in both energy output and tissue hydration.
Which really brings up a larger systemic question here.
What's that?
Well, if the biological mechanisms are this clearly defined, the compound is demonstrably safe, and it acts as a fundamental defense against age-related physical decline, why is there such pervasive hesitation among the aging population to utilize it?
Well, looking at the sources, the hesitation is almost entirely driven by clinical anxieties, specifically regarding renal function. Yes, the kidneys.
When you look at an older adult who is already navigating, a complex web of preventative medications, their primary directive is to avoid absolutely anything that could disrupt their internal organs.
Right.
And the most stubborn, terrifying myth surrounding this supplement is that it destroys the kidneys. I really want to break down the exact pathology of this myth because it is a fascinating example of a biological false positive.
It really is. The kidney myth is the single biggest barrier to widespread clinical adoption. To understand why it persists, we have to look at how nephrologists measure kidney function.
Okay.
When your muscle cells utilize creatine for energy, a tiny fraction of it naturally degrades into a waste byproduct called creatinine.
With an INE at the end, creatinine.
Yes, the kidneys filter this creatinine out of the bloodstream and excrete it in the urine.
Because it is usually produced at a very steady rate by the muscles, doctors use it as a proxy to measure the glomerular filtration rate, or eGFR. Exactly. It is essentially a stress test for the kidneys filter. The medical logic dictates that if the level of creatinine waste in your blood suddenly spikes, it must mean the filter is broken and your kidneys are failing.
That makes sense from a standard diagnostic perspective.
It does. But if you begin ingesting 8 to 10 grams of supplementary creatine daily, you are drastically increasing the total volume of the compound in your system. By sheer mathematical volume, your muscles will generate a proportionately larger amount of that creatinine waste byproduct.
Which means the next time you get routine blood work, the creatinine marker in your blood will be elevated.
Precisely.
And the diagnostic algorithm sees the elevated waste, assumes the filter is failing, and flags a dangerously low eGFR. So the physician immediately assumes renal distress.
They panic.
Right. But the reality is the filter is working flawlessly. You have simply increased the volume of harmless waste passing through it.
Exactly. It is a fundamental misinterpretation of the mechanism. Long-term, double-blind clinical trials examining individuals consuming high doses of the supplement for over a decade demonstrate zero pathological changes to the renal architecture.
Wow, over a decade.
Yes. The kidneys are perfectly capable of processing the elevated byproduct. It is entirely a diagnostic illusion, but one that requires you to explicitly inform your physician about the supplementation so they can correctly contextualize that blood panel.
Always tell your doctor what you're taking.
Always.
Now, beyond the clinical anxiety, there is also a distinct aesthetic hesitation, particularly among older females in the data set.
Fear of bloating.
Right. The fear is that a supplement known for drawing water into the cells will result in systemic bloating, facial puffiness, or the appearance of fat gain.
This circles right back to our earlier discussion on cellular mechanics. The osmotic draw is strictly intracellular.
Meaning inside the cell.
Exactly. The water is pulled directly inside the muscle fiber itself, which increases the density and firmness of the contractile tissue. It does not pool in the extracellular space under the skin, which is what actually causes the appearance of bloating or edema.
Ah, I see.
Furthermore, the longitudinal metabolic data shows the exact opposite of fat accumulation.
Because the lean mass you are preserving is metabolically active tissue, right?
Yes.
A highly hydrated contracting muscle cell requires calories just to exist. So by preserving and expanding the muscle tissue, you are increasing the baseline thermogenic demand of the body, which the data shows leads to a net reduction in overall fat mass over time.
It's actually helping you stay lean.
I also want to address the secondary fear regarding muscle cramps, because the assumption is that by trapping all this water inside the muscle, you are disrupting the systemic hydration of the rest of the body, and that leads to severe cramping.
Which is funny because the physiology completely contradicts that assumption.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a dehydrated, depleted muscle fiber is highly susceptible to misfiring and cramping. By hyperhydrating the intracellular environment, you are essentially creating a biological shock absorber.
That makes perfect sense.
The saturated tissue is far more resilient to thermal stress and mechanical fatigue, so it drastically reduces the incidence of cramping, particularly in older adults who are exercising in warmer climates.
So it is operating like a perfectly pressurized tire that won't just deform or pinch under heavy mechanical stress.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the final hurdle: navigating the commercial landscape. Because if someone listening decides to integrate this into their longevity protocol, the supplement market is an absolute minefield.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's full of proprietary blends, hydrochlorides, liquid serums, and gummies, all claiming superior absorption.
The clinical consensus on formulation is incredibly rigid here. You ignore every novel chemical iteration on the market.
Every single one.
Every single one. The only molecular structure that possesses decades of rigorous, peer-reviewed safety and efficacy data is the original 1832 discovery: pure creatine monohydrate.
Just the basic stuff.
Just the basic stuff. The advanced formulations are entirely marketing vehicles designed to patent a slightly altered chemical structure for higher profit margins. They have never demonstrated biological superiority to the basic monohydrate form in a clinical setting.
Good to know. The source material also mandates checking the manufacturing origin. Because dietary supplements operate in this regulatory gray area without pre-market FDA approval, the risk of contamination is significant.
It really is.
The data recommends isolating products that specifically list Creatine on the ingredient profile, which is a patented synthesis process from Germany known for extreme purity.
Yes. Or, at the very least, the bottle must carry an independent third-party testing certification, like an NSF seal, just to guarantee the powder is entirely free of heavy metals like lead or arsenic.
Yeah, you don't want lead with your longevity protocol.
No, the purity of the synthesis is non-negotiable when you are ingesting a compound daily for the rest of your life.
Right. And from a lifestyle perspective, the adherence seems remarkably simple. The monohydrate powder is entirely tasteless and completely water-soluble. You can dissolve it into your morning coffee, mix it into oatmeal, or just add it to a water bottle without altering the texture or flavor profile at all.
It's very easy to take.
But I am curious about the biological half-life. Like if I diligently saturate my cellular reservoirs over a month, but then I travel for 2 weeks and I forget to bring the tub of powder with me, does that osmotic pressure instantly reverse? Do the muscle fibers immediately deflate and lose that force-generating capacity?
The biological retention is incredibly robust, actually.
Yeah.
Once the intramuscular and skeletal reservoirs achieve maximum saturation, the degradation rate is remarkably slow. If you completely cease all supplementation, it takes approximately 4 to 6 weeks for the cellular stores to fully deplete and return to their baseline energetic state.
Oh, wow. So a short trip doesn't ruin it.
No. A 2-week lapse in protocol will result in a negligible drop in systemic phosphocreatine levels.
That's great. So to synthesize the core physiological principles we have extracted from these clinical findings today, the sensation of physical fragility as you age is not an unbreakable biological law.
It really isn't.
It is the result of metabolic energy depletion. And by combining the mechanical stimulus of resistance training with a daily 8 to 10 gram dose of highly purified creatine monohydrate, you provide your cellular machinery with the exact energetic currency it requires to halt the degradation of your lean mass and your bone mineral density.
Beautifully summarized.
You are effectively arming your biology to maintain its functional independence.
It represents a fundamental shift in how we approach the aging process. It moves the patient from passively accepting cellular decay to actively reinforcing the energetic capacity of their structural tissues.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating biological implication to consider as we wrap up today. Throughout this entire analysis, we have mapped exactly how this molecule operates as a rapid-fire energy safety net, basically preventing the ATP batteries in our physical tissues from dying under stress.
Right.
But muscle and bone are not the only tissues entirely dependent on that energetic currency.
Definitely not.
If this simple compound can fundamentally stabilize the metabolic energy of the physical body, what are the implications for the most metabolically demanding, energy-hungry, and neurologically complex organ we possess? The implications for cellular energy and cognitive preservation in the aging brain are just beginning to be explored in the literature.
It's the next frontier.
It really is. Something to consider the next time you swing your legs out of bed.